Welcome to the Audiobook Lovin Series, a month-long event celebrating the authors and narrators that bring romance stories to life. Listen along as Viviana, Enchantress of Books, interviews your favorite writers and voices, shares special guest posts, and stay tuned for some special information at the conclusion of the episode.
Hi, everyone. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with guest author Sienna Snow. Welcome to the Audiobook Lovin Series, Sienna. How are you doing today?
I am doing great today.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been writing, and how you got started?
I am known in my author circles as the author with a sweet face and a dirty mind. I started writing around 2015, but didn't publish my first book until the end of 2016, and I went traditional. And then I decided to go indie in 2018 because I have control issues. And after that, I never looked back. I just love being indie. And then I found my niche in 2019 with dark romance because I kind of love the anti-hero bad boy. I love giving them their happily ever after. And that's kind of like my wheelhouse. I found it and that's where I stay.
Mm-hmm. You and I met a few years ago at a Shameless Book Club here in Orlando, Florida. And you're right, you have the sweet face with the dirty mind. Because when people were looking and introducing me, we actually were doing in a table, and they do this thing almost like speed dating where everybody in the table tell things about each other. And I'm thinking, oh, this is Sienna still. I had not done any research yet. And I'm thinking, oh, she probably writes cute contemporary romance or maybe some historical, sweet stuff like that. And then she busted out with them and going, oh, okay, hi. I like you.
I try to write clean and then I just veer left and I just can't do it. It's like I cannot close the door for the life of me. It has to be all there.
Yeah. Well, that's good too. I mean, and there's nothing wrong. And that's the other thing. I like the term like clean romance versus not. It's just one of those like you were saying, I prefer to do the whole like fades to black or closed doors. And sometimes we want to, and sometimes we don't, and that's okay. And that's all good. And that's why we have it. But yeah, that whole definition of sweet face, but dirty minds, I was like, that's accurate. You sort of touched on the genre that you're mostly in your wheelhouse as far as the dark romance. Mm-hmm. What is it about specifically, though, aside from giving the hero the happily ever after, that you really love about that you just keep writing in it?
Well, dark romance is pretty broad. It can be anything from dubcon to, just kind of like the kidnapping stuff. I don't go to that extreme. Mine is more like the anti-hero. Mm-hmm. And I love the guy that isn't perfect. I like the imperfect hero who hasn't had the perfect background, who kind of is that, what most times people would think is the villain, but he's not. I like that guy. So like, mm-hmm. even in, certain movies or something, I gravitate towards who would possibly be the bad guy and then trying to give him that happily ever after kind mm-hmm. of thing. And that's what I like. I like the guy that you would not expect to be the hero
Yeah, no, the anti-hero is one of my favorite subgenres and tropes because you don't expect it. And you're also kind of wondering and playing, okay, how is she, the author, going to do this? Make me like the guy, fall in love with him, and redeem himself. And you guys are really good at that. Is there a subgenre of romance that you have not written in that you'd like to at one point in time?
There is. It's kind of like, I started writing in it and my girlfriends keep pushing me towards it. And I started a book and then I was just like, all right, I've got to write it. I want to write fantasy. I want to write dark fantasy. And I've written a few chapters and I kind of know what I want to do, but maybe in the future I might write it because I already have the story in my head and it's totally wild, but I'm going to write it one day.
And what is your process when it comes down to writing stories? Do you plot, plan, panster, journal? I mean, how do you go about writing a story?
So I'm a planster. So I generally have an idea what I want to do. And then I sit down to write and it just goes in a different direction. Because even the book that I'm writing right now, it's the third book to the series I'm doing. I had an idea and I sat down to write it. And I even did it like a sketch outline. It was very loose. And then when I wrote the first chapter, I'm like, I hate this chapter. So I put it away and I decided to write it a different way. And then even that first chapter veered left. And I was like, oh, I like it more this way. So my whole story is completely different than when I originally was sitting down to start. So I just kind of go with my characters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I have a general idea and I know exactly how it's going to end, but the middle is just completely on its own.
And when you say that you let the characters speak for themselves, are you one of the authors that hears their voices in their heads and they kind of take over? Or do you just kind of have an idea based on how things are falling onto the paper?
I write to music. And so it's really crazy. I have a very eclectic sense of music. I love hip hop. I love EDM. I love rap. So I'll be listening to my crazy eclectic music tracks. I'll even go to like old school hip hop and from like the 90s and the 80s, and something will trigger a scene and I'll literally put it into a playlist on Spotify. And then I'll go back to it and I'm like, this scene has to be in my book because it'll make me think of something I want in my book. And then I'll play that song over and over again while I'm writing that scene until I get it right.
So you do have those playlists available for listeners and readers.
Well, I haven't actually made them available because I've never really done that. And I've had readers ask, and I was like, well, a lot of my playlists have a lot of cuss words in it. And it's like, it's a lot of F-bombs and it's a lot of sexual and it's conversations and stuff. It's like, it's not clean. And so then
you do realize who your audience is, right?
Yes, I know.
Romance.
So it's like, there's one song, it's pretty like, it's like a violent sex song. And I thought, oh my, and I even did an interview once and they're like, give me that song. So I sent the link to them and they're like, this song is awesome, but it's totally like a dubcon sex song.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote a whole scene to it. And I was like, it is one of my favorite sex scenes I've ever written.
I think sometimes I'm very protected too sometimes when it comes down to, maybe potential shock value of what the other person is when they ask questions, or if they knew that I listened to, for an example, Nordic Viking songs at times. People are like, oh, okay, yeah, because I too have very eclectic, my playlists are all over the place. But I think it's kind of cool when we get to have that insight information a little bit, and then we have that moment where almost like, it clicks, and we now totally understand where that scene, there's something to it. There's something extra that we're going, because the song just makes it all better. So if you ever think about that, let us know.
Yeah, because it's crazy that I know the plot of book 4 already because I was driving one day and a song came on and it literally triggered how the whole plot of book 4 is going to happen. And I haven't even written book 3 yet. And I was like, man. So then I put it into a playlist for book 4 because I was just like, okay, I already know what's going to happen in that book.
Wow.
But music really triggers my writing.
Mm-hmm. One of my questions was going to be like, when it comes down to your ideas for these stories, is it mostly just in the music, or do you have other ways of getting these ideas that pop into your head for the books?
Sometimes I'll be like, I'll watch a show, I'll go somewhere, travel. Before the pandemic, I traveled everywhere. It was just something, it's my passion. I love to travel. I love to see the world. And I always want to put places into my books. And I remember like the Gods of Vegas series happened because on my 40th birthday, my husband surprised me with a trip to Vegas with my friends. And the whole series was born there. And I knew I was going to write a series about bad boys in Vegas. And it started with, I went to the Chandelier Bar in the Cosmopolitan, and my husband took me to have this drink where you eat this flower. And when you eat this flower before you take your drink, because they put it right on top of the drink, and the bartender literally says, eat the flower, then drink. So I ate the flower, my mouth went numb, and then I drank. And as my taste buds came back, the drink tasted incredible. And the guy said it's the flower is like in the family of the elderflower.
Mm-hmm.
And literally that's how my book came about, the first book in the Gods of Vegas series, because my heroine, she created an elderflower whiskey. And that's how, like, it's literally how my book started. because I knew my heroine was going to do something like that.
That's so cool. And now I'm curious about that drink. And
well, once Vegas opens up, go to the Chandelier Bar there. That bar is incredible too.
Yeah, I've been there once for convention, the RT Book Lovers Convention. Did Vegas and stayed actually in my room for most of the time, as unless we were doing the events, until one of my best friends showed up and surprised me on like close to like the third date before we left. And then she took me sightseeing, and that was one of the rooms, and I remember it because of all the chandeliers and the crystals and stuff like that. Did not know about that drink though. So when I do go back,
and it's only served on the third floor, the very top floor of the bar.
Nice.
So you have to ask for it.
Okay, good to know. On my list of things to do now. So aside from those inspirational moments, when it comes down to your real life things, like that girlfriend trip that you got for your birthday, is that stuff too that you include sometimes as part of your writing?
I include certain experiences from my travels. I don't include like actual things that I've done, because some of that I keep private.
Yeah.
Because I've done some wild stuff, and I won't put that in my books because my girlfriends are like, you got to keep that private.
Yes. Yeah. But it always seems to, we're always curious when the author writes these scenes and we're like, I wonder if she went skydiving and that's why she went and decided to add that to the book.
Well, those kind of things I have put in, like, I've had a unique past, because you wouldn't think I would, but looking at me, but yeah, I put some of that stuff in my books, but I don't put the exact situation in.
Cool. When it comes down to the writing process itself, what type of scene do you love to write?
I love writing sex scenes. I know a lot of people don't, but I enjoy that, because if I have a good sex scene in my head, I can just knock it out. It's the ones that if I feel like the sex scene is forced, I won't put it in the book, because that's hard for me to. If I feel like it's hard to write, then I know it doesn't need to be in the book.
I know sometimes I think you're actually my second guest that says that their favorite is the sex scenes. Usually, it's not like you mentioned. The author's favorite, they'll write a insert sex scene here and then keep writing the story, and then they'll go back to it.
My sex scenes, it's part of the story. So like there's stuff that happens in the sex scene that if I didn't put it in, it wouldn't make sense, because there's a lot of emotion and things are happening in the sex scene besides the sex. And so if I don't put it in, it won't make sense.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the reasons why I do love your books, is that sometimes it feels like there might be those types of scenes are used as fillers to get to one point to another, or just to add more, anything, fill in the blank, whether it's the sexual content or just the more steaminess. But you're tend to actually be part of that process where you're giving us more info, whether, like you said, it was emotional or just in their conversations that's happening. Yeah. And I think that's how, it really should be.
I've had girlfriends ask me, they're like, can you just write my sex scenes for me? I was like, I don't know your story. I can't do it.
Well, that's a compliment. And at the same time, wow, that's good. Well, it's hard sometimes, because you're also not only worrying about the storyline, but you're also sometimes have to, when it comes down to describing, if his hand was first up here and now it's down there, and how many people or hands are there, and like, wait, it looks like there's 3 people because of the extra hand, but there's only 2. So I can imagine that's also.
I also have an amazing editor who will call me out on that. Like, she'd be like, hold up, homie. This is not happening. She is so rough on me, but we've done, right now we've done 13 books together, and she pulls no punches. I love my editor because she's just ruthless with me. She's like, no, his dick's not supposed to be there. So she'll call me out.
That's good though. I mean, it's important to have those individuals in your life, whether professional or in your personal life, that will call you out on things.
Yes.
But especially when it comes down to that, because then you'll end up getting dinged on it on a review, or something won't make sense. So it's awesome that you have an editor that is spot on and that is going to say to you, no, the dick that's not where the dick belongs. Yeah. I can imagine those notes that you guys write to each other on the side there. Dick doesn't go here, dude.
Yeah, she put she was just like, okay, what's supposed to be here? And then she puts in like, like these little exclamation points, and she'll do, little, emojis, and we have a good relationship. So it's fun.
That is good. That's awesome. So on the opposite spectrum of the more difficult scenes, are there anything specifics that you're going, ugh, or depending on the story, are the difficult scenes, and what are those like?
The hardest scenes for me are when I get stuck. Like it's when I'm writing and writing and writing, and then I write myself into a corner.
Mm.
And then I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't go with my plot. Do I need to delete this? Because it's just, sometimes I'll just write, and then I realize this has nothing to do with my story. I just wrote a bunch of, I wrote 10,000 words that do nothing for my story. It's just like filler.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that struggle to, do I delete it? Do I do? So I literally, cut and then paste it into a Word document. So in case I need it, I don't delete it, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hardest part for me, when I have to like cut scenes because they don't push the story. It's just stuff I wrote.
But it's good if you're able to use that stuff over again. But I know that you guys have deadlines, and I know that's a lot.
And I sometimes just save it, and then I'll have readers say, I was like, do you guys want to see a deleted scene? I was like, it has nothing to do with anything, but it's a scene that I threw out.
Mm-hmm.
And readers want to just look at it. And I was like, it's not edited, so don't give me, crap about it, and they'll read it.
Yeah, again, it's part of the inside of the process. The readers tend to fall in love with the authors as a person, especially when there's reader groups involved and you guys are part of it and are, popping in. Same thing now with the narrators groups where you guys are popping in and sharing stuff. Those are things that we get to know you better, and thus more curious and intrigued about other things. And yeah, sure, deleted scene, great. And then also sometimes when we see something, we're like, oh, ooh, okay. And then you kind of get a memory of like that deleted scene or something if it's ever reused for something else. I know someone else has done stuff like that. You mentioned about having some of these experiences that you know of or have done into the books a little bit, as far as, but from a character perspective, the ones that the characters that you've created, is there one that you connect the most with, and why?
So I put a little bit of myself in all the characters. I really had a connection with Henna from Master of Revenge, because she was so all business, and that's how I had to be before I became a writer and I was in the corporate world. It was like, she was a female in an all male kind of world, and that's what I did. I was in finance, and I was an executive in finance, and it was a really hard position to be in. And I remember I channeled all the crap I dealt with there for her. But the character that I absolutely love the most, that's kind of is the one, Danica. Like she's my nerdy other half. Like I just love her so much because she's geeky in like I am. I'm really a geek.
Yeah, so for obviously this is done in audio, but when Sienna and I first started talking, cameras were on, and I'm like, hey, you have a little Yoda, and she's like, no, I have lots of little Yodas. And then I'm like, yeah. And so that conversation about geeky kind of came up. So aside from Star Wars, what other stuff do you like as far as the geekdom?
I love so like I'm a big Matrix fan. I love Underworld, so I like a lot of like sci-fi stuff. I love old 80s things like Goonies, Princess Bride, Coneheads from the 90s. Like I'm serious geeked out. Like I'm pretty like and then I'll sit with I'm not as big a Star Trek fan, but he is, so I'll sit with him and watch that because he's totally geeked out in that. But that's kind of like, we're nerds, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with nerds. Nerds are individuals, and they're sexy too. We like nerds.
Yeah, when I met my husband, and my dad was like, "Oh my God, two nerds in love. This is really, really ridiculous." Because we will sit and watch, like do movie marathons of like Harry Potter, and we'll watch Star Wars. And he's like, "Get out of your house." I'm like, "It's a pandemic. It's okay."
I know. Yeah, there's no peopling happening right now. It's fine. Do you listen to audiobooks in general?
I have like 200 audiobooks on. I'm an audiobook fanatic.
Okay, good. Not putting you on the spot or anything, but who are your top favorite narrators?
Well, so so I have a lot. So it's okay, so Joe is one of my favorite narrators. That's how I contacted him. Like I literally, when I was looking for narrators for myself, I was just like, I'm just going to contact everybody I love. And that's how Joe is one of my absolute favorite, because that's how I can't even remember what book it was he was one of the first narrators. I was like, man, his voice is sexy. And that's literally how I started listening to some books. I was like, I like this voice. And then Andy's voice, I love her voice. But she was narrating as, I forgot what is her other name. And that's how I originally found her. And so I loved Andy and Joe's voice. And so it was just kind of like those two combined. I would be like, okay, if they're narrating, I'll look at the book. But then there's certain authors that I love. So it didn't matter if it was the narrator or not. If it was the author, I would get the book.
Okay. Because a lot of listeners are, like, the term is like narrator motivated. And we'll have discovered brand new authors because we're following the narrator around as far as who's their next client or their backlist too. And so it's always interesting that there's some that will then fall in love with the author, and then the author becomes an auto buy, regardless if it's an audiobook or not.
Yeah.
So that's a cool thing.
And also I listened to a book by an author that I loved, and then I loved the narrator's voice so much. So then I started looking for books by that narrator. And so I really liked Simone Lewis's voice. And I just like, I've heard her voice somewhere. And then I realized it's Sonila Nakani's voice, because I have her books too. And I buy all her books just from her name. And because she's narrated a bunch of my friends' books. And then I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's why I buy all those books, because I'm attracted to that voice. It's just like I can listen to the narration, and then I just was like, okay, I can just fall into the story.
It's one of those things that I've had books where I've tried reading them and I'm going, I can't do it, Captain. And then I find to see if there's an audiobook, and then there is, and I'll grab it. And it's just the narrator that has been able to get me out of that funk for some reason, or the way they read it was just different than how I was reading it in my head. And so that makes it go, oh, okay, that's different.
Oh, yeah.
So as a fan of audiobooks, aside from that, what made you decide to put your titles in audio?
I kept getting emails. They're like, are you going to do this? You've promised us. Are you going to do this? And then I had, so every few months I have these group of super fans that kept messaging me. They're like, are you lying to us? And I was like, no, I'm not lying to you. I plan to do it. So then in November, all three of them sent me emails. It's like as if they're friends. And they sent me, they bombarded me with emails week after week. And I was like, I'm doing it, I promise. So I literally, that week, I went and decided, I was like, I'm going to just bite the bullet and do it. And that's how it all started.
Nothing like peer pressure.
Yes.
Well, that's also nice of you, because I know sometimes as fans, we get very passionate about the books and the industry and stuff like that. But it can also be a turnoff for you guys to even tell us anything going forward if individuals behave in a negative way. So that was also very nice of you to be like, okay, no,
fans, they've been my fans from book one, and I'm really casual with them. They've also been very supportive of me when I had a health crisis this past year. I had a cancer scare, and they knew about it. They were the few fans that are kind of friendly with me. So they helped me with my reader group and stuff. So they knew. So then if they were on my ass about something, I was okay with it.
Okay, good. Yeah. That's a good distinction too, because again, the intent.
Yeah, because they, from my very first book, Rule Breaker, they've been my fans.
Those are great to have. Those fans that are there from day one are awesome. So you decide to have the books in audio, and then you're like, ooh, Joe Arden, the narrator, also owns and operates Blue Nose Production Company. And they've been pushing out books left and right for the past couple of months. And you reached out to Joe, and how did that process start and go?
So literally, so I'm one of those people who believes in like manifestation and things like that. And I was sitting with one of my girlfriends and she goes, who do you want to narrate your books? And so I gave her a list of my top male narrators. And then she goes, so what do you want to do? And I was like, I think I'm just going to email all of them. And literally everyone said they could do it. And I was like, well, but then Joe said, hey, I have a production company, so I could make it easier on you. And at the time I was still doing treatment for my illness. And so I was like, you know what? I need someone to handle this because I don't want to handle a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I literally was like, well, Joe is my number one narrator. So, okay, this was meant to be. And that's literally how it all got into production. And he literally has made it very easy for me to just say, here you go. Here's my book. Take care of it kind of thing.
When it comes down to the casting of the characters, because these are your, your babies and you know these characters, do you provide, in this case, the production company, Blue Nose, with information so they can figure out the casting, and then do they come back to you with options as far as for you to select from, or how does that look like?
So for my Gods of Vegas series, there was also an actress that I follow on Instagram. She's an Indian actress. She's from South Africa, but she, because of the pandemic, when she moved to the US, her, LA shut down. And so I just sent her a message and said, hey, have you thought about doing audiobooks? And she's like, well, no, not really, but I'm interested. So then I put her in touch with Joe, and that's how I got Yami. And so I kind of casted Yami for my books. But then when it came to my Street King series, I had given Joe a list of the narrators that I love, female narrators. And then he also knew that I wanted to cast narrators that were representative of my characters. So if I had an Indian character, I wanted an Indian narrator. If I had a Black character, I wanted a Black narrator. If I had a Hispanic character, I wanted a Hispanic narrator. Like, I was very adamant about that. And so he agreed with my feelings. And so he gave me a selection of narrators, and then we picked from there.
I know sometimes the authors are not included in the process. Some of them are like, these are the only ones you will cast. So it's always interesting to see how all this came about, because we get the final product. We get everything's done. And so a lot of the times we get curious as to what that process looks like. Yeah.
For me, representation was the big thing, because my books are all about multiculturalism. And so I wanted to bring a lot of authenticity, even with narration, into it.
Yes, and that's a very important point. And I know that, especially as of late, the industry has done a lot of changes and has done and gotten a lot better with having these open conversations. And it's just, again, representation is extremely important. When it comes down to that, are you looking more for based on the culture and background of the character, or is it also like if they have a specific accent?
The culture and background, and because most of my characters, they're they have the background, but my characters are written I jokingly call, so there's a saying, it's kind of like, I guess it's a little bit, they call it, people like me, American born confused desis, which means it's like we're American born and we're confused because we have one foot in one culture, one foot in another. And so I write characters like that because we are, I'm Indian, but I'm also very American. And so I write characters that are in two cultures. And so it doesn't matter what culture it is. If it's, in the new book, Vicious Prince, he's half Puerto Rican, half Indian. In my next book, the character, he's half German, and half Indian. And so, I always do characters that are biracial, or, or full Indian, or full something else. And so I want to bring that culture into and so when I cast someone for audio, I want someone who is Hispanic or is Indian. And if they have to do an accent, they can do that accent. So when Simone Lewis did the Indian accents for my book, Dangerous King, she had it spot on, because she is Indian.
No, it's cool because I'm also, as you were saying, half here, half there.
Mhm.
And it mine's with a Latin background. And so anytime my spidey senses always kind of come up a little bit in that tinkling, and when it comes down to making sure the representation's there, when it comes down to characters that are of different backgrounds and nationalities, because there's always that stereotype that, oh, because you're Hispanic, for an example, then you sound Mexican.
Oh yeah.
Or that you have that background because you're from, England or India. There's always these, stereotypes as
Mhm.
we have them. And I know that sometimes even with the best of intents, it can go badly.
Yeah, because I like when we were I do that sheet where you say what is their accent. I literally
Mhm.
said she's Indian, but she has no accent because I have
Mhm.
no accent.
Right.
And I grew up here, but I'm Indian. But
Yeah.
if you talk to my mom, she's Indian, but she's British because she grew up in England. But my
Mhm.
dad, he has an Indian accent. So
Mhm.
we're completely, hodgepodge.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. That was
Mhm.
a fun household growing up, for you.
Yep.
Yeah, because not only the accents, but also the different dialects and the words have different meanings.
Oh yeah.
And again, this is also from experience. Even though mine were both Latin, one was from Cuba and one was from Chile. And then my grandmother was Argentinian and she lived with us. So those are three different dialects of
Mhm.
the same language. And I'm going to get so in trouble because, bad words and
Yeah.
different things. A straw is not a straw, just a straw in Spanish,
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's very similar to your, upbringing as far as
Oh
that
yeah.
having such different dialects. It does make it for an interesting upbringing, good stories, I'm sure.
Yes. There's some insane stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I mean, nothing like going into a room and saying that, you're saying you got a job, but the word that you use means you had sex in a room full of your male relatives. That happened to
Yeah,
my mom.
and the Indian cuss words are nothing like English cuss words. They're so vulgar.
Mhm.
Like they're disgustingly vulgar. And I'm like, why would someone say that? Like you're just sitting there going, it makes you want to throw up, like some
Oh.
of these cuss words. And I'm like,
Mhm.
but they use it, they just throw it around. And you're like, I can't say those words.
Yeah, I'm sure that when it came down to learning them, though, those were all also interesting conversations that you were having. Like, what? Whoa! Especially when the translation has to happen, because English versus what it is in a different language is totally different things.
Oh,
You know.
yeah. And so growing up, my mom was really conservative. So I didn't know cuss words. My mom never cussed. She was just like very prim proper. That's just my mom. So my sister and I would call each other farm animals because in our language, that's all we knew. Then my cousins came to live with us because they
Oh.
were immigrating to the US
Mm-hmm.
and they were using these words. And they were like, why are you calling each other farm animals? And so then they started teaching us these cuss words. Our mind was blown. And it was just like, oh my God, no one told us these words. It was just insane, some of the stuff we learned. That's what you get when you get male cousins moving into your house.
Yes, it's always a cousin. I've noticed. I had the same thing. I had my cousins would come over to visit from like South America, and it was always like, Mom, what does blah blah blah?" And then she's like, "Viviana, stop repeating what they're saying."
That's pretty much how it happened in my house too.
And I go, "Well, I wouldn't have to repeat if you would have just told me." Do you listen to your own audiobooks when they've come out, or when as far as the proofing process?
Oh yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I go through all of them. And so before we approve anything, I'll go through each one and listen. And then if I have any changes, I'll just let the audio team know that, hey, this doesn't sound right or something. And then they'll fix it.
I know sometimes authors are like, "Oh no," they
The
cringe.
crazy part is when I listen to it, like, so just because they're my books, and I still buy my own books because I just feel like it's like, it's my book and I want it on my Audible list too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll listen to it sometimes and then I'm like, I'm critiquing my book because it's my book. And I'm like, I shouldn't have written it like that. Because when I hear it, I critique my book and I don't enjoy it though. So then I'm like, I got to just stop listening to this and I'll go to a book that I really like. Because it's like when it's your own book, you're so hypercritical.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you have other people telling, oh, it's such a good book, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I didn't like this part of my book. But, you're just being hypercritical of your own work.
Since you listen to audiobooks and you have your books in audio, are you now finding that as you're writing your books, you're writing it more for audio? Like less tags, more dialogue, stuff like that?
Well, I've always gotten dinged for not putting tags. My editor's like, I think you need to have more tags. Because I do a lot of dialogues, and she's like, who's saying this? So I've never really had that issue, because my editor gets mad at me for that already.
Okay.
Yeah, because she used to always tell me, she's like, I need the tag here. So that's where I usually end up doing it. Even when I sent it in for the audio production, I had to go in and I had to put in parentheses, this is who's saying it. This is who's saying it. So that way the narrators knew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the script prepping. Fascinating step too, by the way. Those are always fun. But yeah, I was always curious because sometimes, because we've moved forward in the audiobook community as far as, more popular things are being trending, authors are starting to do that because those tags can be a little bit distracting. But and see, you almost like manifested the audiobooks already because you were doing it from the beginning. So that works out.
Yeah, I'm totally a believer in manifestation, because I believe in just putting it out there, and God, universe, whatever anybody believes in, if you truly believe it, it will happen.
Agree. Do the same thing. I try to get better at that too, because sometimes I'm going, you get jaded, but bringing back that concept is always important. You mentioned that you like to travel, but aside from that, when you're not working, what do you do for fun?
I cook. I love to feed people.
Aww.
I love to cook. So my children love to make like sweet stuff, and I like to cook savory things. So like I buy cookbooks. I love cookbooks. And so I will look through cookbooks and see things that make me hungry. And then I'm like, I'm going to make that. I'm going to make that. And when my kids were younger, they would they would just spin the globe and they'd put their finger down, and we'd try to find a recipe from whatever spot in the world that they picked, and do stuff like that. We'd make recipes from all over the world. Sometimes it was really hard to find recipes, because if it was like a country that I could not find a recipe from, we'd have to spin again.
That's a cool idea though.
And I just love to cook. It's fun. So like my mother-in-law just invited her whole family to my house for 4th of July. Nope, that's mother-in-law. And,
I love how you said that.
And so I will be cooking for 15 people. And so I was just like, you know what? It's all good. I love to cook. And this is the first time all of us are getting together since before the pandemic. So I'm like, we'll have fun.
Wow.
And I'm just going to cook up. Like, it's going to be so much food, because they're all staying at my house too.
Oh my God.
I'm going to have kids coming out of all ears of my house. That's good.
Yeah, no, it's good. And it's so that's happening for the July 4th. So I'll check in with you to see how you're doing and how all that stuff went afterwards.
Well, there'll be a lot of tequila drunk.
Okay. Oh, goodness gracious. I love the idea of the globe, and I might start using that for the whole like concept of, hey, what do you want to eat today? We can just spin the globe and figure out if you want Italian or Chinese or something else, and kind of go there. I'm in a similar boat. So at the beginning of June, the 5th through the 12th, I'm traveling to Destin, Florida, which is on the Panhandle, with my my in-laws and other in-laws, like sister-in-law and brother-in-law, stuff like that. There's a total of 15 of us. And yesterday I wanted to confirm when they said that each family takes a turn cooking for the, everybody. If it was everybody in the house that we're in, because we have to rent 2 different houses because there's 15 of us, or if it's all 15, it's all 15. And then my mother-in-law is like, but you don't have to worry about that stuff, Viv. I mean, you're a chef, you know how to do this stuff. I'm going, yeah, it's still different.
That's what my mother-in-law's like. Well, this person has this and this person doesn't like this. I was like, I don't care if this person doesn't like it. The person with allergies is the person I care about. If you don't like it, there's fast food. The person who has allergies, I will accommodate.
Yep. That's actually my next text is to everybody saying, okay, can I have a list of any allergies or sensitivities that I need to know about, as far as like some people are not specifically allergic to gluten, but have sensitivities to them. And like I have one that I just need for like 5 minutes straight, or get tummy upsets and stuff like that. So I'd rather just keep that in mind. But yeah, otherwise I'm going, this is going to be fun, because the age range is like grandparents' age to like, I think the youngest one is like 6. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, same with us. I've got in the 70s all the way to 7.
Nice. So you're checking on me.
I'll be like, how are you surviving?
Yes. Did you bring your big tequila bottle? Yes, I did. And then I'll check it on you for July. Yep. Sounds like a plan. Oh, goodness. It'll be fun. It's going to be fun and stuff like that. It's just one of those things where, because of the volume, I'm like, it's okay. I was at Home Goods, that store. And
I love Home Goods. I can get lost in there.
Me too. And I was in the food section, and then I saw that they had gnocchi, but they had it in these huge bags. So I got 3 of them, thinking that should be enough. No, it's not, but now I can use that as an accompaniment to something else that I'm going to cook for when it's my turn. But that had me going, I was like so happy when I saw that.
Cook it and put pesto on it.
Yes.
And throw tomatoes in there.
That's what I was thinking too. And mushrooms.
Yeah. And some cheese.
Yep.
And you got a nice side dish.
Exactly. It's exactly what I was thinking about doing. And I was thinking about maybe adding some cute, some other like squash or anything, just to give it more of a filler. But I'm also thinking doing a meat sauce with it. And so having people do either the pasta one or the meat sauce, and then they can choose.
Yeah, that sounds good too.
Yeah, I like giving people options. I like to cook and I like to feed people. And I like to have that feel like when you're eating the food, you're going, for the various reasons.
I like to do like everyone knows that I always do something like, I do for the majority, and then I'll do like some Indian stuff for my in-laws. And then it's crazy because everyone's always like, well, the Indian stuff smells really good. I'm like, no, that's not for you guys. Y'all get traditional, 4th of July fare. They get
hot dogs, yeah. What is your favorite thing to cook?
Favorite thing to cook? Honestly, it just depends on the day. I love to make Italian food, but I don't like to make traditional pastas and stuff. I like to make like the braised things, like northern Italy stuff, where it's not mostly pastas. It's like
more meats.
The chicken, the veal, things like that. Like I told my husband, I was like, I want to go to Tuscany and cook. I want to go into those areas of Italy and go do cooking classes.
Yeah, I was going to tell you that they have stuff like that there, where you can go and do cooking classes. Just make sure that you try to find the ones that are more authentic than touristy kind. Yeah. So that's cool. That's a good thing to do. Similar to on my list of things to do as well is that. And even the wine process and how they do stuff is always fun for me. That's good. So we'll have to figure out how to get some of those recipes from you that you decide to do.
Oh, yeah.
If you could have any animal as a pet, so not just your traditional domestic animals, what would it be and why?
Okay, if I could have any animal. I would love a penguin. I know it's the weirdest thing. An emperor penguin. I just find them so cute.
They are adorable.
But, I live in Houston and they would die. But they're just so cute.
Nope. Yeah, Houston gets hot.
And it's just like, they're just beautiful creatures, and they're so resilient because sub-zero, minus 100 degrees, and they can survive.
Yeah. And they also they have other characteristics that they're fascinating too. I mean, they're monogamous, and the father will be the one to take care of the eggs too. It's a lot of things. That's a cute animal. That's definitely one. So what song, since you like the music, do you have to sing along with when you hear it, regardless of where you're at?
I have so many. Oh my gosh. So old school wise, probably anything by Salt and Pepper. I'm old, okay? So like I'll be 45 this year. So I love anything that's old school hip hop. Anything, okay, so modern wise, let's see. Damn, now that I'm like on the spot, my brain just went dead. That's just what happens to me. Like,
hey, been there, done that.
like my brain just literally went dead. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Literally, my brain is totally mush now.
That's fine, because now all I have in my head is you being in the supermarket at Kroger's and just listening to, any of Salt and Pepper's coming out there, push it, baby, push it real good, and having you there in the middle of the aisle.
I literally have done that. So my girlfriends and I, we were at Book Lovers Con, which it used to be RT.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the we were standing in line and Push It came on, and we just all looked at each other and we started dancing. And people are looking at us like, these women are insane. I'm like, it's our generation. We can dance to.
Yes, we know this song.
Because it's just fun. Just be ridiculous.
Yeah. And those kind of conventions like that, when you go with a group of friends, is always fun. But also when you meet new people and you're hanging out with them, and we have at least one thing in common, which is the love of books.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have more conversations. And then when stuff like that happens, and you're like, "Oh, you too? Oh yeah." So that's always fun. But now I'm going to have that anytime I hear Salt and Pepper, I'm going to think of you now. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, exactly. What's your favorite word?
Favorite word?
Mm-hmm.
What do we say? Well, I use the word fuck a lot.
Well, that's your favorite curse word. That's where I that's a separate question. Because
favorite word. I have no idea.
Huh.
My favorite word. Let's see. Resilience. I have that everywhere in my office. Resilience.
Cool. And now what your favorite curse word is?
Well, I use fuck a lot. So I guess that has to be my favorite word.
Okay. Yeah. But again, I mean, with your background, you have different options too.
Yeah.
And
I also, like in my writing, I use cock a lot. So,
It's okay. In Art and Stardust, we have Cock Saturdays. So.
Oh, yeah.
we're like on the lookout for roosters, and we're like at Good Homes, and I'm going, oh, there's Joe. Take a photo, send it to the group. Nothing like shopping for family, and then you have that image there. But yeah, no, fuck is a great word. It's very versatile, has lots of different usage, so it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So we have come down to the game section of our chat.
Okay.
We're going to ask our guest to tell us 2 truths and a lie, where you tell us three things, and we have to figure out which one is the lie. And I say we because I like to think that the listeners are hanging out with me at the same time, and we're going to try to figure this out. And the listeners will put their comments in there to see which ones they thought was a lie and if they got it true or not. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, I am ready.
Okay, shoot.
So two truths and a lie. I was stuck on an elevator with 2 hot coworkers. I went into labor on a plane. I had an arranged marriage.
All very possible. Okay, let's see. Stuck in the elevator with 2 hot guys is a lie?
No. That is actually true.
That's actually true. Okay. Well, I remember you were saying corporate world and finance, and I was trying to remember because I, work for a Fortune 500 company too, and I'm trying to remember. No, they aren't that. That's not like the books in real life. Okay, so, um, gave labor on a plane is a lie then?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, that would have been my second choice too.
Mhm.
Oh wow. Okay. So that was so these two guys, were they you were literally stuck in an elevator, like in your building?
We were they were doing so I was in Chicago and we worked in one of the towers and they were doing maintenance and they
Mhm.
didn't tell us. And so it was only supposed to be like a minute, but because we were going down from like the 40 something floor in between, it's just stopped and we just all looked at each other like, and I'm claustrophobic. And so I was just like, what the hell is just happening? And then we all looked at each other. And then we get a text message saying that, they're doing maintenance. We're like, there's people in the elevators.
Oh gosh.
And so it was only like 15 minutes, but we were there and I'm like, I'm not going to freak out because there's really two hot guys on here because they're really hot. And we go to lunch and stuff normally,
Oh, okay.
but they're really hot.
And it's also different when you're, passing them or you
Mhm.
do things like lunch, but to be stuck in a room in that kind of a situation, yeah,
Yep.
it's definitely a different
And I just didn't want
scenario.
to freak out.
Yeah, because that would have been bad.
Mhm.
Makes for a great book, though.
Yeah, true. That would make a great,
Mhm.
male, female, male, or
Yeah.
male, male, female. That would be a really good book.
Yeah, it would. There was one that I read where the hero and the heroine get stuck in an elevator, and then in the building that I was in, which wasn't a huge building, but it was at least 5 floors, and I was closest to the service elevator, so that's what we would use in that area. And man, that one time that it just did that whole like bouncy thingy, and then it stopped without the doors opening. I'm like, this would make a really good book if I was in this room with a hot guy. I was by myself. Otherwise, please open the fucking room.
Yep, exactly.
It's like, no, that's not how this works. And then that one time that it wasn't with the hot guy, but whatever. Everybody was safe. That was important. But yeah, lack of communication, people. It's
Mhm.
important that you tell what's going on.
Yeah, they were supposed to have made sure that all the elevators came down to the bottom floor before they turned off the power,
Oh my God.
and they didn't.
Someone never got that memo, huh?
Yep.
Jesus. Anyways. So before we go, can you tell us what you're currently working on and what's coming up next for you?
I am currently writing the third book in the Street King series. I started writing chapter 1 yesterday. And the next book in the Street King series comes out in August. It's Vicious Prince. And I'm super excited about it because it was one of the toughest books I had to write because it's a character that the hero, I had people have serious reaction to in book one because of feelings about him in book 1.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to redeem him. And so it was just like I had to write a lot about him and I had to go into very deep emotions about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like, but I love these two characters a lot.
Nice. That happens too, right? When there's a character that we're going, don't like them, and then we find out that they're the hero in the next one. I'm going, oh, how is she going to do this?
Yeah. But there's a whole rhyme and reason why I did it because it's the whole book is about people getting second chances. Like because there's a lot of people who have done things in their lives that they're not proud of, or they become things that they're not proud of, and how they have to redeem themselves because they're actually good people, but they've made bad choices. And so it's like that kind of story.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I wrote it, there's like a few scenes in there that I actually ended up crying, right? After I wrote it, I was like, I got up and I cried.
Wow.
And I called my girlfriend. I was like, why did my own book make me cry? And then she was just like, because that's a good scene. And I was like, okay. And then I sent it to one of my girlfriends because I was like, is this book okay? And she's like, you got me crying. And I was like, okay, good. I did my job.
Yeah. You guys like making us cry.
Well, I didn't expect, I've never really made anybody cry in my book. And then this scene really hit me hard.
Mm.
But I also channeled stuff that happened to me in real life
Mm-hmm.
when I wrote it. So then I was like, okay, maybe that's why it hit me so hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, this book impacted me harder than I expected.
Sometimes it's amazing what resonates with the listener, the reader, as well as the author as they're writing the stories. I know that I'm not much of a crier at all, and there's been maybe 1 or 2 books in the 10 years that I've been doing all this stuff that have made me cry. But you guys are hilarious with your cups, like mugs that say, drinking the tears of my readers. Or Joe, when you have those like, yes, this is gonna make you cry, and then you always have that one fan that also says, I don't cry, and they're like, haha, goal achieved when they do. So it's always fun.
And I was really excited because my editor, she's really tough, and she goes, this is my favorite heroine you've ever written. And I was like, really? Okay, I did good, because it's very hard to impress her.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
And we have those people in our lives that we're going, okay, if they like it, then I'm good.
Yeah.
So that's, or extra bonus points if they liked it. So that's really cool. I'm really looking forward to these upcoming releases. Anything else that you have down the pipeline that you want to share?
Well, I've got those going. I've got German releases of my books coming out, working on that, French releases. And I will next year, hopefully when conferences start. Well, I am going to Shameless at the end of the year, so I will be there. And hopefully you'll be coming to the Blogger Breakfast because I'm hosting it.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And so it's going to be a fun party. I'm honestly, I'm so excited about Shameless. You have no idea. I'm like, I'm getting freedom from Texas.
It's in November, so we should be having some nice cool weather by then where it's not too cold, not too hot.
Oh, I don't even care if it's hot. I just want to go.
Okay. Yes, I will definitely be there for, hanging out with you guys there.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to a fun time with readers and author friends and just having a good time.
Mm-hmm. And
so it'll be that's something to look forward to. And then next year, Book Bonanza, and I have no idea. I signed up for everything that I could.
Well, we will check out your website to make sure that you've listed what's coming up, and that way we can do a Sienna hopping and kind of hang out with you there.
Vicious Prince will be narrated by Gregory Salinas and Simone Lewis.
Thank you, Sienna, for being my guest for this year's Audiobook Lovin Series. Appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. And everyone, thank you for hanging out with us today. And we hope you've enjoyed this episode as well as the series. And until next time, happy listenings.
The Audiobook Lovin podcast has special Patreon incentives. Join today to receive early access to podcast episodes, exclusive content with our guests, and much more. Support the podcast by becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/audiobooklovin. Thank you for your support. Thank you for joining us on the Audiobook Lovin Series, hosted by Viviana, Enchantress of Books. We hope you have enjoyed this episode as well as the series. We've included audio samples of our guests' work within the post for you to check out. Please make sure to visit the main page, link within the post, to learn more about the series, the authors, and the narrators. Please consider leaving a review wherever you listen to this series if you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to follow us on our social media platforms and subscribe to the Viviana, Enchantress of Books newsletter. Until next time, happy listening. Audiobook Lovin hopes you've enjoyed this program.